Welcome, everybody. A very warm welcome to everybody that has joined our Changemaker webinar 2 this afternoon. My name is Lisa Armstrong, and I am the joint interim director and training and development manager for Respect Me, Scotland's anti-bullying service. And it's a pleasure to have you all with us today for our second webinar in our Changemaker series, Are You Change Ready? Body Image and Appearance and Bullying Part 2. So our Changemaker theme this year is inclusion and diversity, to spotlight the connection between effective inclusion and diversity work and preventing bullying behaviour. In webinar 1, we heard from some of the key players doing important research and work across Scotland in relation to body image and appearance, and we introduced at the end Respect Me's 7 calls to action so that children and young people can grow up free from appearance-related bullying. So in this webinar 2, we want to help you understand how to put these calls to action into practice by being change ready. So before we get started, it's my privilege to have back with us today speakers that joined us in webinar 2, and we're delighted to invite back with us Changing Faces, Girl Guiding Scotland and Glasgow City Parents Group, who will share with us what being change ready looks like in practice. And we'll be seeking the answers to questions such as just how can we prepare the ground for important change to happen when it comes to preventing appearance-related bullying, how to make the changes that need to happen actually happen, and to make these changes sustainable so that our calls to action have the best possible chance of being effective and successful. So at this point, I'll just draw your attention to the chat box. You'll see in the chat box about to appear is our agenda for today. And this outlines how the session is going to flow today, our speakers and what time each speaker is going to present. And you'll notice that each presenter is followed by a Q&A session. So you'll have your opportunity to pop into the chat box at that point any particular questions that you've had in relation to the presentation. So before we get started into the presentations, I'd like to hand over to Claire from Red Harbour, who's going to go through some housekeeping items with us, as well as direct us how to use Slido, which we're going to use to interact with each other today during the session. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, everyone. I'm Claire Hunter from Red Harbour, and I'm managing the webinar this evening. So just a couple of notes for you. The session will be recorded, as noted, and all your cameras have been disabled and your microphones muted, and will remain so during the session. Please ensure that your name is displayed correctly with no abbreviations as per your booking form to help us with the admission process. Respect Me would like to remind everyone that they operate a safe space today, and they kindly invite all attendees to be respectful towards our speakers and each other when using the chat box. Respect Me reserves the right to remove anyone who is disrespectful. The chat box will give attendees the opportunity to message myself if you have any technical issues, and allow relevant practical questions to our speakers on how to prepare for and create change. We will ask as many relevant questions as we can from the most frequently asked in the time allocated. Please note there will be no break today. However, as the webinar is being recorded, please feel free to grab a cup of tea or have a break if required. Microsoft Teams offers closed captioning should you require this. Once you have joined the event, you can access this by going to your settings, click on Accessibility, turn on the toggle Captions to select Always Show Captions in my meetings. And just to let you know that a survey will be posted in the chat box and a QR code will be available at the end of the event. We would really appreciate you completing this survey before you leave the session so we can pass the findings to Respect Me's funding and managing partners. The responses also help with producing future sessions. Finally, if you have been affected by bullying, respect me, understand that it can be triggering. Please feel free to leave the session and take a break if needs be. Organisations such as Parentline or Samaritans can offer support if required. For audience participation today, we will also be using Slido to do quick polls with you in real time. You can use your laptop on a different window, or you can use a smartphone, tablet. If you have this ready, we will just run a couple of questions to familiarise yourself with Slido. So I'm just going to share my screen. And this is the first question coming up. Could I ask you all to either go on to slido.com and then when it's prompted, put in the number 2584981 or scan the QR code on the screen here with your phone and then start to answer the questions. Thank you.
That's good to see some of the answers coming in. So we've got engagement, some of the barriers that people are facing when it comes to being change ready, implementing change. We can see engaging with young people, reluctance from others, time, capacity, parental understanding, organisational fear of change, building partnerships, policies. So lots of different reasons that we can see here that might get in the way of being change ready and implementing change. So really helpful insights coming through from everybody. Thank you.
That's great. I think most people have. Yep, I don't see anyone else typing, so I'll just move on to the next question. Oh, did I miss a first question? I think I might have missed. Sorry, I've missed the first question. Sorry, can we go back? Can
That's
you please
okay.
answer? Where in the country are you joining us from today, and in what job, role, capacity are you attending? Sorry about that.
I think it works either way round, to be honest, Claire.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I can see a range of local authorities and areas being represented. I can see a couple of people joining us from south of the border. So welcome. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you with us.
It's great. There's just one other person typing, and then I will pass back to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Claire, for taking us through that. And what we're going to do now is, I think, just remind ourselves really what this is all about. And essentially what I would like to bring this back to, just to remind you, as I introduced at the beginning, the theme this year, inclusion and diversity, spotlighting the connection between effective inclusion and diversity work and preventing bullying behaviour. And in the last webinar, we had shared some insights of work that we did with Glasgow City Council through their youth forums, listening to children's experiences of appearance-related bullying and what we could all do to prevent and address it. And I'd like to start by reminding ourselves just why the work that you'll hear about and what you are already doing and what you will go on to do after today to address appearance-related bullying and all forms of bullying is just so vital and important. It's important to remember that as adults, we all have a duty to keep our children and young people safe and protected from all forms of harm, including bullying and all forms of prejudice and discrimination, and that we all absolutely have a role to play in doing this. So Back in December 2022, over 300 primary and secondary children from across Glasgow told us over 2 days about their experiences of bullying related to appearance and what they had witnessed and how this was affecting their lives and the lives of their peers. And this bullying happened in relation, as you can see on the screen here, to many different aspects of a child's appearance. And time after time, they told us that very often the bullying that their child that they were experiencing was to do with something that was related either to a protected characteristic, such as race, ethnicity, religion, disability, but often they were also experiencing appearance-related bullying to do with non-protected characteristics, such as their height, weight, and hair colour, and many others that you can see on the screen here. And sometimes children were experiencing a mixture of bullying to do with appearance that were a combination of protected and non-protected characteristics at the same time. And then you can see from this slide that the bullying behaviours took many different forms of ways that they were ways that the bullying was showing up. We can see here a range of different things, such as physical behaviours, such as kicking, pushing, punching, online bullying, shaming, humiliating, and many, many others. All of this is in webinar 1, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail with this just now. But we also listened to them sharing some very moving stories of how appearance-related bullying was actually impacting those young people's lives. So again, you can see here a range of these impacts, from feeling upset, lonely, frightened, ashamed, having disordered eating patterns, and in some cases, at the more extreme end, having suicidal thoughts because of bullying to do with their appearance. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. So every child we know will experience the impacts of bullying differently, and there is obviously a spectrum of impacts in terms of how these impacts are affecting them. So from low-level impacts like worry, anxiety, to much more serious impacts such as suicidal thoughts, and at the most extreme end, a completed suicide. The other thing that we found in our work was that the impacts of this of appearance-related bullying can have a ripple effect and also affects the lives of a child's parents and carers. And by working in partnership with Leanne Maguire at the as chair of Glasgow City Parents Group, we heard the voices of parents and carers via a focus group about their children's experiences of bullying related to appearance. And Leanne's going to share some of this work later. But at this point, I'd like to introduce Safia Rahman, our training officer, Equalities and Inclusion, and she's going to highlight how being change ready when it comes to addressing appearance-related bullying connects with wider inclusion and diversity practice. So over to you, Safia.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks so much. I'm just going to pull up my presentation. Okay, so let's look more closely into how being change ready connects with wider inclusion and diversity practice. From my work over the years at Respect Me, it is clear that the key to being ready for change is laying strong foundations for robust anti-bullying and positive relationship approaches. This includes recognising, responding to and preventing bullying related to prejudice in order to build transformational change across Scotland's children and young people's settings and a more equal, just and inclusive society. In most cases, this is done by implementing and embedding inclusion and diversity practice into our everyday, so it's sustainable and non-tokenistic, and so it reaches and includes everyone across society, i.e. pupils, young people, teachers, youth leaders, parents, carers, and organisations at grassroots and in leadership. This combined effort is hugely important so we can collectively raise awareness of and celebrate diversity and similarity. As we discussed in webinar 1, celebrating diversity highlights to children and young people the importance of respect and fairness for all. We all have similarities and differences, and we are each completely unique, and that is something to be proud of and celebrated. Understanding what unites us helps children and young people to build empathy and compassion for each other, as well as an acceptance of others for who they are, regardless of their identity or appearance. So to accompany today's webinar, we've created a digital resource pack full of useful signposting links, school and youth spotlights and resources to help you on your journey to becoming change makers and being change ready when it comes to addressing appearance-related bullying. In this, you'll find a spotlight on 2 schools who've both demonstrated excellent change making and are at different points in their journey. You can read how they've created sustainable change and overcome barriers using the framework of children's rights to inspire you. Bullying, as you know, is a violation of children's rights, and so addressing bullying, including appearance-related bullying, through the lens of children's rights can be very powerful. Dean Park Primary School is a gold rights respecting school, and during reaccreditation, their equalities promoting work was recognised and celebrated as a strength. They have successfully put all respect these calls to action into practice by, for example, raising awareness across the protected and non-protected characteristics through whole school diversity weeks, providing training for parents and carers on anti-bullying and anti-racism to embed knowledge and buy-in across the school community, having active pupil, parent and staff equalities groups, providing information about protected characteristics, including thought-provoking statistics and information in head teacher updates to parents and carers, introducing worry monsters for pupils to promote safe spaces, and so much more. You'll see the improvement plan on the screen just now, together with a kindness banner designed by the pupils and a news article celebrating their success on Diversity Week. Salerno High is another impressive rights respecting school that has been working towards goals. In terms of our calls to action, you'll see in the digital resource pack that they too have ensured buy-in from parents and carers. They've created inclusive environments by informing their school community about any significant days, celebrations or events. They've promoted a culture of non-discrimination by creating a rights week to celebrate education, diversity and children's rights across the world. They've set up pupil leadership groups and empowered their pupils to lead inspiring local campaigns. For example, a campaign focused on promoting body positivity to address mental health issues associated with body image. You can see the impressive logo and slogan, "All bodies are beautiful," which they designed on the next slide, on the slide just now. Lastly, you can learn more about Young Women Lead 5, who've been working together to develop a Safe Spaces toolkit in relation to calls to action number 5. Children and young people need to feel safe to come forward and report all forms of bullying and to feel confident they will be supported well when they do. Before handing back to Lisa, I'd like to remind you all of Respect Me's 7 calls to action on appearance-related bullying. I put these on the screen just now so you can see them. We'll also put them in the chat box for you to read at your leisure. You'll see these referred to in our partners' presentations today, so you can see how they're already applying these. Broadly, these focus on education, inclusive environments, and working together. Thank you so much, and now I'll hand you back to Lisa.
Great, thank you, Safia. And without further ado, I think it's timely now to introduce our first presenter of today's session. We're absolutely delighted to have Susan Ross from Changing Faces. and also Laura Matthias, who is a campaigner for Changing Faces, and Susan is going to kick off the presentation in her capacity as education lead for the organisation. So welcome, Susan, and I'll just invite you to start your presentation.
Hello, everybody. Just waiting for right. Thank you anyway for inviting us to talk to you today. I hope that we will give you some insight in how you can affect change in your settings to prevent and respond effectively to appearance-related bullying. I'm very pleased that today we're joined by Laura, who will talk about her lived experience. You may have come across Changing Faces before, but for those of you who haven't, Changing Faces is the UK's leading charity supporting people who have a visible difference. We describe visible difference as a scar, mark or condition on your face or body that makes you look different. This could be something you're born with, like a cleft lip, or could occur during or develop during your lifetime, such as a limb difference, burns or scars. Anyone can be affected by a visible difference at any point in their life. Today we're talking about calls to actions and how to embed real change. For Changing Faces, we believe that through education of teachers, leaders, children and young people, we can bring about real change. And this is what Respect Me's call to actions 2, 3 and 4 are all about. Through education, we can create inclusive environments where appearance-related bullying is less likely to thrive. From our work, we know that bullying, stigma, ostracism are experienced by young people with a visible difference, and this is widespread in schools, youth groups and wider society. We know that protected characteristics are more widely understood, and that schools and youth settings have strategies and policies in place to address bullying based on these characteristics. However, for visible difference, the situation is different. Some situations don't recognise that there is an issue with bullying, see it as inevitable or unsure how to address it. Therefore, much of our focus is putting the groundwork in place through awareness raising and education about visible difference. There are barriers to change, but for us, raising awareness of society's negative view of visible difference and challenging those views will bring about greater understanding and acceptance. There's no easy answer or simple steps, but educating everyone to be critical viewers and readers of the media's portrayal of visible difference will help change attitudes. Today I'll be talking about how literally thousands of years of negative depiction of people with visible difference continues today. The depiction of witches with warts and hook noses, through Joseph Merrick, known as the Elephant Man, to Scar in Disney's The Lion King. For children and young people who look different, the negative tropes, characterizations and depictions of visible difference can lead to them experiencing bullying behaviour, which can have a devastating effect on their mental health. Here's a 1-minute film about the bullying experienced by young people due to how they look, to remind us why a change maker is so important.
When I was in year 3, I used to get called names like Scarface and Joker, just because of the way that I looked, and that's when I began to notice that I looked different.
When I was 5, people would keep staring and really not want to come anywhere near me, and they wouldn't want to touch me either. They just thought it was contagious.
Someone I think a bit younger than me, maybe 7, made a comment like, "Oh, what's wrong with her face?" and just was staring at me, and it made me feel really embarrassed and uncomfortable, because I feel like from an early age you're taught, don't stare at someone, it's rude.
I got bullied quite a lot throughout most of my kind of junior and secondary school. I would get called names like Iron Man, like you've been burnt by an iron.
It made me feel really isolated and not really have that many friends.
I got a few comments like, "Oh, you look like Voldemort," or, you know, the classic like pig nose and stuff like that.
When I got called those names, it was heartbreaking, because I knew that this is how I look, this is how I'm going to have to look at myself for the rest of my life.
You probably noticed that many of the young people called names based on characters in the media, books or film. Not only is visible difference a shorthand for villainy, the opposite is also true. Conventional good looks is shorthand for honesty, intelligence and success. Where people with a visible difference or disfigurement appear in the media at all, they are characterised as evil, stupid or bad. They are stared at like Joseph Merrick or hidden away like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. With these consistent and all-pervasive depictions of visible difference, it isn't surprising that many in society, consciously or unconsciously, see something innately wrong with looking different. That anyone who does look different must also have some sort of character flaw, and this has a huge effect on how people with a visible difference are treated. It also has an effect on how they view themselves and can result in low self-esteem and self-isolation, leading to anxiety and depression. We found that there are barriers to addressing appearance-related bullying in schools and youth settings. From our experience working with UCL, some teachers and leaders lack confidence in this area. They've told us that they don't know how to talk about visible difference, so they avoid the subject. They're concerned that they may get the language wrong and cause offence, or that showing images of people with a visible difference to children and young people will shock or even upset them. We've also found that they may see bullying as inevitable for young people who look different and that there's little they can do. They may feel uncomfortable or embarrassed themselves being around people with a visible difference or disfigurement. We know teachers and leaders' behaviour can influence how young people behave, so it's important we overcome these barriers. So to help schools and youth settings address appearance-related bullying, we've developed a series of resources called A World of Difference. They're available to both on our website and on the Education of Scotland Hub. There's also a version for youth groups on our site and on the YouthLink Scotland Hub. We suggest teachers and youth leaders use the CPD resources before using resource aimed at young people. The CPD resource goes into detail about how to prepare the groundwork for change and gives suggestions about how to handle tricky situations. They examine teachers and youth leaders' own potential unconscious bias in relation to visible difference. What to do if a child or young person reacts negatively or laughs at depictions of visible difference. How to ensure all pupils feel safe. The importance of having a whole school or organisation approach, from classroom assistants to heads, from volunteers to leaders, through to break time and trips away. Part of the groundwork is for teachers and youth leaders to examine their own behaviour, such as choosing certain pupils to answer questions or chatting to certain young people after an activity, all of which can mimic or exacerbate the exclusion faced by young people who look different. The Young People resource looks at depictions of visible difference in the media, such as Disney movies, Harry Potter, and many other films, comics, and TV shows. This is why Call to Action 2 about addressing negative messaging and stereotyping about appearance is so important. By helping young people become aware of the depiction of visible difference, we can educate and develop their critical thinking skills about the role of the media. The resources have been downloaded over 3,000 times, and we know that when that students in schools or youth settings use the resources, they come to a greater understanding of their own thoughts and behaviours and begin to question and challenge the media's portrayal of people who look different. We know that our resources help to create change in attitude and develop empathy and understanding about visible difference. This creates environments for young people where appearance-related bullying is less likely to thrive and all children feel safe, respected and included. As one boy at the Greenock Youth Centre said, when asked what he thought people with a visible difference felt about the negative portrayal, he said, "It's a combination of outrage and sadness." Today, we're talking about calls to action and how to embed real change. To do this, we need to ensure it goes beyond the health and wellbeing lesson or diversity inclusion week. We know of schools who have successfully embedded change by reading novels such as Wonder or Something Else by Chris Riddell, or using writing lessons to ask pupils to write about the Hunchback of Notre Dame's treatment as if they were journalists witnessing it, and others who have used art lessons to examine depictions of visible difference through history. By asking young people to examine the media around them, we will challenge society's negative view of visible difference and begin to celebrate difference. It can sometimes be difficult to see the individual experience when talking broadly about visible difference. That's why I'm so pleased that we're joined today by Laura, who's going to talk about her experience. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you so much. So, hello, I'm Laura. I'm one of the campaigners at Changing Faces, so in a volunteer capacity, because once I discovered the charity, I thought this is something I need to get involved with, and this would have made a huge difference to me when I was 13 years old, because that's when I developed alopecia. So total hair loss, from my face, from my body, complete change to my physical appearance. And that completely disrupted my life, to the point where I'd already experienced bullying at school due to my appearance for being an overweight child with glasses and eczema. And so I stopped going to school for 6 months because I couldn't actually face leaving the house from fear of anyone, adults or children, seeing me going progressively bald, because I had never seen an example of a happy, healthy, bald girl or woman. It was just not something I was aware of, which is why when I was asked to summarise in one quote what I would want to say, this is why I said, if you can't see it, you can't be it, because there was no role model for me to look up to. I didn't talk about the fact that I was a wig wearer because I did eventually shave my head and wear a wig. Once that wig was put on at the age of 14, I never left my house without it until 2 years ago. So even though I've had a visible difference for over half my life, I'm now 31, grand old age of 31. It's really new for me, this journey of embracing my difference and seeing actually the strength that can come from that. And while I don't resent how long it's taken me to get here, there is part of me that doesn't want anyone else to have to wait this long to be at a point where they can feel confident just to be who they are. And I am fully aware, looking at those key milestones, whether it be in education settings, school, university, workplaces even, that a huge part of my journey, or resistance in my confidence journey, was actually because I didn't have the support I needed, and I didn't have that inclusive environment created for me or made to feel that I could create that and be that change maker, which is why now I'm reclaiming it and I'm a proud campaigner. So yes, since the pandemic, very active volunteer with Changing Faces. And I just wanted to kind of echo what Susan was saying on a couple of points, but just give personal examples, because while I may be 31 now, obviously it's still recent memory, and when something traumatic happens, like completely losing your hair, there are key things I remember. And also I am in the privileged position where I volunteer a lot with both Alopecia UK and Changing Faces youth groups. So I've met a lot of young campaigners, and it is really clear to me how opinionated they are on media representation, in particular, of visible difference. But almost they're so eager, like they've never been given a safe space to talk about it. And so in a recent youth voice board with Alopecia UK, through my learning with Changing Faces and knowing I was coming to the seminar, I was almost posing the question to them, and I just couldn't shut them up. It was amazing. So I'm really pleased to see, obviously, Changing Faces speaking directly to young people, and I think shifting the power to children in all of our settings and asking them the question and celebrating their voices is really key to know what we need to do better. Basically giving young people the confidence to come and talk about their first-hand experience. I think a big part of that for me would have been knowing at school that even if in the media there wasn't role models, within the school environment, or rainbows or brownies or girl guides, that the people you're hiring, the group leaders, the teachers, the speakers, the guests you're having to come along, you have control there to audit who you're having, who you're hiring. So there's an opportunity there to create a microcosm in your own little society to make sure it's representative. So that would have been really, really powerful. I also remember teachers joining in with nicknames, and not necessarily targeted at me, but there is something about when nicknames derive from a character that somehow it's one removed, so it feels somehow acceptable or funny or safe. And I think it would be really powerful to know that, yes, teachers need to be enlightened more to know of the impact that has. I definitely echoed, when I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, Susan's points about how we consider the representation, especially in things like English and media studies. And I say that because I went on to study film and literature because my favourite subjects were literature and media studies all through to sixth form. And I remember really interrogating, like, what did I think about the representation of this particular character? And yet all the while I was sitting there as a girl, terrified to tell anyone that I was wearing a wig. And yet we were dealing with talking about villainy. We were dealing with visual shorthand for things. And I had a really useful insight there, but I didn't feel empowered to bring that to the group, which is just such a shame. And even throughout my university career, I never felt in a position to do that. So whether it's English, media studies, sociology, there's PHSE, there are so many ways where I think that should be fundamental, regardless of what stream that you specialise in as a student. It just needs to be there. Speaking finally, just quickly to call for, because I know we've overrun slightly, in terms of creating a culture of body acceptance, I do feel like in the community, in school places, in groups, having a space where you can just be who you are is key. And I think so often now, especially with social media, young people are finding they have to create their own space. They're having to find their own space because adults can't be trusted to do it. And that really concerns me, because sometimes we need educators. We do need educators to come in and make sure we are signposting to the correct support. Obviously, peer-to-peer support is vital, but there is a massive education piece to be done for young people as well. So I think my point would be kindness alone isn't enough to be truly inclusive. We need to ensure that not only are students and peers not excluded, but they're actively engaged and considered. And I can't even, like, the amount of times a teacher was trying to be kind to me by overly, referencing, because she knew about my hair loss, for example. I remember a particular PE teacher, she would say, "Oh, Laura, I know that you won't want to play netball, you'll want to sit this one out." And she marginalised me. She made me feel othered. And that was through her actively trying to be kind, because she didn't know how to deal with me. And I didn't know how to self-advocate at the age of 14. Of course I didn't. So upskilling for teachers to deal appropriately with visible difference, not just in terms of their terminology, but in terms of their approach, just dealing with young people, would be fantastic, because we know, and I experience firsthand, how that it's not just self-esteem, it can develop into real mental health. Like, I didn't leave the house for 6 months. That's, looking back, a very intense reaction to the change in my physical appearance. So just the fear of being bullied stopped me going to school. And I know many young people who tell me some of the experiences they've had. So yeah, empathy is key, but it's not enough. And finally, just referring to social media again, it would be great to see schools actively engage and upskill their students to think about how they can use social media as a force of good. Susan did touch on it, and I think it's really important. But recently, humble brag, I was included in a list of people on the Female Lead, is another big charity about, body acceptance people to follow. And actually, just having a charity and Changing Faces do this as well. We curate and think, and we direct to people that are positive people to follow. And we talked during the Stop Your Stare campaign last year about curating your feed and kind of really putting the power back on young people to say, you can choose who you follow. And if someone doesn't make you feel good about you or your visible difference, you unfollow them. But I noticed a lot of examples have come across my page, especially around and this is pertinent to me because I'm bald, obviously, lots of bald pranks. And I'm talking about an American influencer who's huge on YouTube, and I mean millions of followers, specifically within the tweenie demographic, young girls. And she created a video that went viral and wasn't criticised at all, apart from by the alopecia community, where she would put on a bald cap, and it was a whole sketch about how then her mum walked into the room and was so shocked and disgusted to see her, she fainted and repeated the lines, "You're not my daughter, you're not my beautiful daughter, where is my beautiful daughter gone?" And that video had over 2 million views, I believe, and it just made me feel so angry and so frustrated. But also, all I could do in that situation was choose to kind of not watch it again and tell people not to watch it. But the amount of young, easily influenced people that would have seen that, I think there's a lot more work to be done by schools. While we can't always call up YouTube, Instagram, TikTok and whatever to actually cancel and remove these high performing videos, because let's be honest, it's about bottom line for them. What we can do as educators, and adults in positions of power and influence over students and our community groups is explain to them and use that as a case study and talk them through it and explain why. If I had all the hours in the day, I would come to every school lesson I could and be like, this is how I felt when I was your age. You know, ask me the question, don't otherize this person. But I don't. But the more people and ambassadors and campaigners we can have through Scotland and beyond would be amazing, so we can really make a change. So thank you for listening. I'm sorry I am now 31. I do appreciate that I can't speak firsthand about these experiences, but let's not underestimate how they've actually shaped the rest of my life. And all these years later, I can still remember these incidents like they were yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was incredible. Thank you for sharing those insights and for being here today. Thank you very much. I'm just going to very quickly finish off with top 3 tips. One of them just reflects exactly what Laura said about be cautious of nicknames. Adults don't always know what those nicknames refer to, so always use proper names and make sure that the rest of people in the class use proper, or the setting use proper names as well. The next one is to examine your own views on visible difference. Be comfortable with visible difference, so make sure you experience the other people who look different. Make sure you look at your own reaction to people who look different and examine that, because how can you talk to young people about visible difference if you haven't thought about it yourself? And the other one is representation is very important. Use images, stories, examples throughout all your lessons or your setting, because the more familiar people become with visible difference and how different people look, the more accepting they will be of everybody. So I'm going to draw to a close there, because I know that we are slightly overrunning, and also I'm going to stop having to look up as well. So I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Susan and Laura, I can't thank you enough for that first presentation, which just has opened up this session with an absolute bang and a huge amount of rich, insightful information that I don't know about other people that are here today, but it's given me so much food for thought and reflection. And as Laura has said, nothing can replace hearing from somebody that has actually walked that path. And this, just to remind everybody that's on the call today, we are recording this session, and as Laura said, she can't be in every school, and neither can Susan, but we will have Laura and we will have Susan on a recording. So if anybody wants to use the aspects of the recording today to draw out those conversations with children and young people, to raise awareness and get people to be thinking about the role of media and just how important it is to examine our own unconscious biases, I would really urge you to use the recording in that way. So without further ado, so thank you so much. I'm going to go straight now to the Q&A for Laura and Susan. Just while we ask you to put any questions that you've got for Laura and Susan into the chat box, we probably will have time for maybe 1 or 2. We'll just give you a moment or so to put them in if you've got anything that you'd like to ask. And in the meantime, Safia is going to kick us off with one question that we already had.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lisa. So Susan and Laura, so I'll direct this to Susan first. We're aware, obviously, that visible difference doesn't always receive the same level of awareness as protected characteristics, for example, race and disability. So what can our audience do to accelerate change making when it comes to ensuring children and young people with visible difference get the support and protection they need and deserve?
Okay, I think to ensure that young people with visible difference, it's about talking to that young person or the parent, depending on the age, obviously, and asking them what they want, what would help them. Sometimes people they don't want to be singled out. I think Laura said something similar. On the other hand, they may need a safe space, someone they can talk to. So I think it's talking to parents, depending on the age, talking to the young person themselves, and making sure that they feel comfortable expressing anything that they're concerned about. So I think that's the first step, and that's I don't know, Laura, what do you feel?
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful in the video you shared, actually, Susan, when the young chap said about it was only when the comments came to him, he realized that he looked different. So he didn't have that self-identifying moment by looking in the mirror himself because he didn't know any different. So I think in terms of understanding the impact it has, it's having that conversation. I totally agree, but also introducing the term visible difference, because I'm 31 years old and I've only been using that term for the last year and a half since being a campaigner. And actually sometimes labels can be helpful because I feel now like I'm part of a community. I feel like I have terminology to put to this experience that I've had all my life, rather than having to say I'm a woman with said condition, or this is, you know, like it kind of makes it feel more official. It gives it weight. Whilst I know legally I'm not going to be protected by a personal characteristic, there are other ways that claiming that visible difference, makes me feel like I can talk with confidence about the fact that this has had an impact on my life. This did have an impact on me as a teenager. And I think, that feeling of empowering these young people to say, you know, really interrogate, how has this made you feel? Like, and maybe it doesn't impact you, and that's great, but we want you to know if ever anything comes up in school, when applying to university or whatever, you're ready to give voice to that feeling or fear of prejudice, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the parents of that young man you're referring to, she had to go into the school 3 times because he was being called names in the playground, and the school said, oh, it's just banter, it's fine, until she went back again and again and again until it was addressed. Because, you know, as it's like the nicknames, the banter, you know, actually it's bullying. And so, you know, I think that recognising visible difference, it may not, well, in some ways it is a characteristic that's protected, because severe scarring is, in general, it doesn't have those sort of automatic, teachers don't automatically realise that there's potential for bullying because it's not on the list.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Laura. We don't have any other questions that have come through as yet. However, I know sometimes when you're thinking of questions, one pops up further down the line. So just to say, everybody on the call, if something does crop up that you think about, just pop it in the chat box. But just before we move to our next speaker, I've got a comment from Katrina, who's saying that your presentation, Laura, was very powerful. So thank you, Katrina, for that comment. And again, thank you both speakers for your time today. Incredibly powerful and helpful. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Leanne Maguire, Chairperson of Glasgow City Parents Group. And Leanne is going to introduce her presentation, A Model for Engaging Parents and Carers in Creating Change. So welcome, Leanne, and over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. So like Lisa said, I am chairperson of Glasgow City Parents Group, but I am also a member of the Parent Council at St Paul's High School in Glasgow, where my daughter attends. So today I'm going to talk you through how our group works to educate parents and carers on how to recognise, prevent and respond to appearance-related bullying, and how we work to promote good body image and body acceptance, and how we do this through a collaboration by working with partners and parent councils. So the calls to action, as detailed on the screen here, that we're going to cover today is around educating all people working within, with or caring for children and young people about visible difference, appearance-related bullying, good body image and body acceptance, using the digital resource pack that Respect Me is pulling together. And then the other call to action that we will cover today is about galvanising parents and carers to work in a collaborative setting to prevent and respond to all forms of appearance-related bullying, recognising their vital role as influencers in our children and young people's lives, really. Glasgow City Parents Group was established in 2018. As you can see from the photos in front of you, we are made up of volunteer parent council members from across Glasgow schools. So it's a voluntary role. None of us are paid to do this role. We all do it in our own free time. We currently have 8 committee members. We've got 4 vacancies, and until recently we have been a full committee, but due to pupils leaving school and personal commitments, we've lost a few members, which has also reduced the diversity within our group in terms of parents. Although we do have parents from England, Ireland and Scotland as part of our families. However, our children are a better representation of inclusion. So across our children within the group, we have 5 of our children have additional support needs. 1 child is Nigerian Scottish. 2 children are in early years. 7 kids are in the secondary sector. 4 kids are in primary sector, 2 children are in Gaelic medium education. We have 7 girls, 8 boys and a little baby born recently who is not in any of the photos, sorry. Baby Una was not included in these photos, but I can assure you she's a lovely bonny wee girl. So we're currently trying some targeted recruitment to increase the diversity within our committee and to encourage more representation, because we want to be a better representation of our school's diversity as best we can. So the purpose of the group was to represent parents and carers and parent councils and to provide them with a voice on education policy at a city level. The group was set up, but there was a previous group. The previous group, if I remember, was called Glasgow Parent Council Forum. There was a bit of a break in that group, and Glasgow City Council thankfully put out a call for more volunteers to set up a new parents group, because they actually really value that parental engagement and involvement. So the group itself was started by me. I kind of answered that call to action because I just can't say no to anything. I almost say yes to everything, which is probably why I'm here today. And I ran that group for about 3 years on my own. Initially, it was a bit weird where I kept referring to it as a group and really it was just me. I felt a bit odd. But thankfully, during COVID, we saw a huge surge in our engagement and communication. And that was partly down to the beginning of the pandemic, and when schools closed, we hosted a Q&A with Glasgow's education director, which got massive interest. And through those online Q&As and a few additional online events, we were able to recruit a group, and I was finally a group. I wasn't doing it on my own. So the way that the group has been able to create sustainable change has mainly been through using our social channels as our main channels of communication. When I first started with this group, we had something like 500 followers on Facebook and about the same on Twitter. And the silver lining, I suppose, of COVID was that the engagement levels shot through the roof. So as you can maybe see from some of the screenshots in front of you, we have nearly 8,000 followers on Facebook now and nearly 7,000 on Twitter, and we've got a very active YouTube channel. So over the years and through the pandemic, we've adapted and evolved our communications and events to meet the needs of parents and carers by using the social media channels as a way to inform parents and carers about educational matters. And that's both at a local level and a national level. And our social media audience, like I've mentioned, has rocketed, and engagement with our events continues to remain strong. So we use these channels to share our own messages. We also use them to share information about events and also to share partners' messages. And some of those partners include Respect Me, obviously, here today, Glasgow Education Services, Time for Inclusive Education, and many more other organisations. We've hosted many events and webinars for parents and carers with a national reach, not just in Glasgow. And these have included a hate crime webinar with Police Scotland. So that's where Police Scotland came on to educate parents and carers how you could report, well, what hate crime was, what hate incident was, and how you could report a hate crime if you witnessed or experienced it. We have also had a webinar presented from Glasgow's Rape Crisis, and that was around gender-based violence to raise awareness and educate on the topic. And these sessions were part of our equalities series that we delivered. We ran them in November and December 2021. They also included a session with Glasgow Education Equalities Department that covered gender-friendly nurseries and anti-racism work within our schools. And we also had a webinar with Time for Inclusive Education, who talked through the newly launched LGBT education resources. So as you can see on our screen, this is our YouTube channel, and it's a couple of screenshots to show you the vast variety of topics that we regularly present on. So we've recorded many of our events so that we now have a library of resources on our YouTube channel that can continuously be shared through our own channels, through schools and through our working partners. Some of the topics can be sensitive and families may be wary of joining an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting where their image and name could be seen. So there was always that challenge of how do we capture parents' views without putting a spotlight on them or their family. So we do that through using our webinar format, a bit similar to today. But we tend to hold our meetings on Zoom because the feedback was from parents that that was the more accessible platform for them to join. And parents can tune in without being identified. They can also ask questions or they can watch the recording at a time that suits them. So we're just trying to be a lot more inclusive. And also if we record our events, we can add captions, or through YouTube, captions can be included as well. So as you can see from the screen grabs, this is some of the regular feedback that we receive. So as far as we know, we are the only local authority area to have a group like Glasgow City Parents Group that works in this model. So like I say, we are citywide. We work very much in partnership with Glasgow Education Services, and it's entirely done voluntary. Everything our group does is on a voluntary basis. Things like our Zoom subscription, the council do support us to pay for that, but out with that, really, it's all done on a kind of free basis. On this screen, you'll see another event format that we regularly use or we're asked to facilitate is focus groups. So recently we have facilitated a parent care focus group around a variety of topics, from school meals to children's mental health. And as part of their research into body image, appearance and bullying, Respect Me approached us and asked us to facilitate a focus group for parents. So given that bullying is such an important and emotive topic, we were confident that we would have a lot of interest from parents to get involved. So we did our usual call across our social media channels, where we put out a form and you would register your interest to attend. And we put it out in our newsletter. And then we select a wide breadth of parents from across all of the sectors of education and invite them to join so that we make sure we are getting that diversity of views within the session. So by organising focus groups, we facilitate partners to listen to the voice of parents, where the feedback feeds into raising awareness to develop change, like the Respect Me focus group that you can see the information about on your screen. So during that session, we asked parents a number of questions to find out their thoughts on experiences of bullying. And as you can see from some of the responses to some of the questions on this slide, the fact that over 2/3 of parents present stated that they know someone who was bullied because of body image or appearance shows that this is a very important topic to discuss. Some parents even shared their own child's experiences of appearance-related bullying, including myself. My child has also experienced that. If you maybe didn't already guess from the photos, my child is the Scottish Nigerian child. So unfortunately, we know all too well about bullying for appearance-related appearance-related bullying, bit of a mouthful. So if I go on to slide 8, but I think the most insightful discussion that we had from that session was around what us as adults can do to prevent bullying. Some parents suggested that there should be more of a collaborative approach, which includes children and young people, parents and carers, parent councils and school staff. Educating children and young people in schools is essential, but to support these inputs, there should be resources and support available for parents too, because often it is the parents or the carers who are the main support for any child experiencing bullying, and parents don't often feel skilled or supported in how they can help their child. So this is why it's so important to our group to increase representation on our parent councils so that all experiences can be considered and that we can ensure school policies and supports are inclusive. And I actually just made a note as Laura was chatting. Laura spoke about having positive people to follow. Well, I think that can really start with parents, because if parents are having those positive conversations, are involved in their parent councils, then you yourself can be that positive person to follow. So I'm going to just discuss some of the work that we have done specifically around parent councils. So we've worked with parent councils to increase their diversity inclusion with our buddy model. So we've delivered training and pairing up New Scots parents with parent councils. So you can see the way the model goes here. If you start up at the New Scots parent and the parent council member, we pull them together, we match them through the New Scots parent, we find out what school their child attends, we will match them with their parent council, and then we provide support. And that model follows through to the New Scots parent feeling more confident as it goes along. So working with the Mental Health Foundation Scotland, it all started with some research where school staff, parent council members, refugee parents and Glasgow City Parents Group were interviewed to find out what were the barriers to engagement for all stakeholders. The main theme that was identified was a lack of confidence. Confidence in communicating, confidence in attending meetings, and confidence around cultural differences. So Glasgow City Parents Group and Mental Health Foundation Scotland created a training programme for parent councils and New Scots parents. The parent council training was about increasing our understanding of asylum and refugee status and what they were going through while their children joined that school. And then the New Scots training, they received training about what a parent council is and some information about the Scottish education system to try and increase their knowledge and empower them a bit more around the schools and the system. So if I kind of follow you through this, you'll see we come down, the support provided by the parent council member would cover them providing support on meeting dates and papers for the meeting. It would help by breaking down some of the jargon and the terminology. We all know how bad education is for acronyms and jargon, so it can be quite difficult to navigate. And the parent council member would also be there as a support to answer any questions about meetings or minutes or any of the discussion topics. And then if we follow the arrow up, over time with that support, with that buddy, we would hope that the New Scots parent would eventually invite one or more parents to the parent council, and that's where we would call them a community connector. And in turn, they would become the buddy, the parent council buddy to those new members, and so on and so on. And overall, it creates more diversity and inclusion in parent councils, which is a much better representation of the school parent forum than it stands at the moment. So I can also talk to you about how we've delivered a series of ESOL classes where we secured funding. The classes were set up to provide EAL, so English as an additional language, parents and carers. We wanted to increase their confidence and skills to communicate with school staff and the wider school community, which can ultimately help with recruiting more diversity onto parent councils. Our group felt that it was so important to have better representation on our parent councils so that we can understand the challenges of different communities and how the parent council can better support those different communities within the parent forum. If parent councils can be more representative committee of the school, then they will be better equipped to drive forward more inclusive practices. Now, while I've kind of concentrated probably more around the New Scots side of things and different ethnicities, the parent council buddy model could be used for any parent at all. Even just to give you a bit of kind of insight, I started on parent councils just over 10 years ago, and my first meeting, I sat there not knowing what they were talking about. I think I just nodded and smiled in the corner for about 3 or 4 meetings. But over 10 years later, I'm still here. So it's just about supporting people in that environment, that new environment that can be quite daunting. So Glasgow City Parents Group continues to champion diversity inclusion across all parent councils through training for parent councils and delivering information sessions about what a parent council is and how it benefits your school. Over the past 5 years, I've delivered many talks to community groups about the power of parents' voices in parent councils. I regularly share my own child's experiences of appearance-related bullying, and I give advice on how I have advised and supported my daughter through those situations. We are in regular contact with Glasgow Education Services, including the inclusion team, where we have worked on accessible communications for parents and pupils, an anti-bullying charter, and guidance for parents and carers around anti-racism education. And most recently, we have requested that there's more awareness across our schools about disability discrimination. So due to our strong partnership with Glasgow City Council, we have already been invited to participate in the planning of this work. Parents and carers can be a powerful role model for our young people on how to be kind and respectful and inclusive to peers by exhibiting these behaviours too. I think I might have got these 2 slides mixed up, so I'll skip on to this one and I'll go back one. So we feel it's essential that there's a whole school community collaboration and strong parental partnerships to create meaningful change in anti-bullying practice and education. So these are my top tips. Top tips would be to find a variety of ways to gather views. It can't be a one-size-fits-all. That's why Glasgow City Parents Group try to share information in a variety of ways, from our webinars to newsletters to videos to posters. The more variety in the communication that you have, the more engagement you will likely see. Number 2 would be to act on the feedback you receive. We've seen it probably from both sides, where we've seen organisations like Respect Me who've really valued that feedback and they've took it on board and they've acted on it. But there's also been the very, very odd situation where we have passed on feedback from parents and carers. It's not been used, and what happens in that situation is that they're less likely to give feedback because they feel that it will be pointless and it's not going to change anything going forward. So it's really important that parents and carers see that change happening from their feedback. And 3, change can be slow sometimes, but stick with it. Sometimes you get quick wins, which is great, but sometimes you create valuable, sustainable change, and that can take time, patience, and perseverance, but it will be rewarding in the end. So stick with it. And then the last slide is just really contact details. If you want to follow us, go on and have a look through that YouTube library of resources. Feel free to share it. Or if you wanted to discuss anything further or get in touch, then by all means, please do.
Leanne, thank you so much for that presentation. It's pretty much, I feel, like a how-to guide for everybody that's on the call today for how to do really effective, amazing parental engagement and parental involvement work involving, as you say, a diverse range of parents and carers. It pretty much, if you played your presentation back, it's like a step-by-step guide. And I know that today's session is around about appearance-related bullying, but I think that model of change that you've set out could be used in so many different, to shine a light on so many different aspects. I love that buddy system. I think just making sure that parents and carers have got that confidence, that's so important, and having the means to do that. And you've done that in such a fantastic way with your organisation. And I think really what I also take away from your presentation is your desire, your drive, and how you've harnessed the power of social media to to keep pushing forward with sustainable change that involves parents and carers is just amazing. So all credit to you, Leanne, because I know how much work and how much of your own time you give, but you're such an inspiration, I think, for everyone on the call for how to do really good parental engagement work. So thank you so much, really appreciate it. And thank you for the access to your parents and carers to do the focus group work that was a lot of the inspiration for today's, for this series rather. Okay, so thank you, Leanne. I'm now going to open up any questions for Leanne to the group. While you think about some questions that you want to ask Leanne directly, give you a moment to put those in the chat box. Safia, have you got any particular ones that you wanted to kick us off with?
Yes, I do. The question is, Leanne, we know that parents and carers have told us in the focus groups that they would like to be included in awareness raising sessions about important issues like parents-related bullying. So how can we reach as wide a demographic as possible within the parent forum to enable them to participate and engage in change making? So over to you, Leanne.
I think the most obvious answer, given what I've just presented on, is using social media channels. I know that certainly, I think we touched on it with Changing Faces, that there can be negatives to social media. We all know that it can sometimes perpetrate bullying. However, there are positives, believe it or not, to social media where you can reach a wide audience, and particularly when it comes to reaching parents and carers and through parent councils. Parent councils are all volunteers, so social media is like a free tool that you can use to communicate. However, what I would also do is think back to that buddy model and that community connector, because I am not naive to think that we will reach all parents and carers through social media. That just won't happen. You do really need to rely on these community connectors to get that information out to the communities that may not use social media, that may have a language barrier, that may not have a device that they can access it on or Wi-Fi. But like I said in my presentation, it's about using a variety of different avenues to communicate. I think if you only use the one avenue, you're really narrowing it down and having a bit of kind of tunnel vision going on. You're only going to reach a certain community out of that. So I think try and use as many different avenues of communicating as possible. But certainly if you're trying to get to those well, we call New Scots parents or seldom heard voices or communities that you don't normally reach, then try and use that community connector. All it takes is one parent that you can speak to, share that information with, and hopefully they can pass that on.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Leanne. That's really, really useful insight. And I'm sure you'll be inspiring so many of our parents and carers this evening as well. But back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you. So I can't see any questions come in the chat box, Leanne. So again, we might have some that come through, but yeah, I love that term, community connector. It just says, says what it is on the tin kind of thing. And I think just that value of having the mechanism in place to do that is absolutely critical. So yeah, thank you for shining light on community connectors. And I'm sure maybe if we can pop your details in the chat box, your email or whatever, there's anybody on the call, on the audience today that wants to get in touch with you direct about how to create community connectors, that would be really valuable. Okay, so I'm going to try and claw back a little bit of time now and move to our next presenters. So I'm delighted now, if we don't have any further questions for Leanne, to introduce Girl Guiding Scotland, and specifically I'd like to introduce Grace McCabe, who is who's lead volunteer for Speak Out at Girl Guiding Scotland, and Philippa Belshaw, who is their PR and policy officer. And Grace is going to lead her presentation on the title of How Girl Guiding Scotland is Change Ready. So over to you, Grace.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for inviting me back. Philippa, do you want to do the intro, Philippa, or we'll just kick it off?
Yeah, I'll just say a quick hello to everybody. Grace will be leading this presentation as our volunteer, which is what Girl Guiding Scotland is all about. But as PR and policy officer, I work with a lot of young people from across the country, in Scotland and beyond, as part of the wider Girl Guiding UK team. And so this has been a really wonderful learning opportunity for how we can improve our inclusive and diversity policies and practice, and how we can move forward being change ready. Thank you very much for having us.
Brilliant. So yes, my name is Grace McCabe. I am 19 and I'm the lead volunteer for Speak Out at Girl Guiding Scotland. And in this second webinar, I'm going to be talking about the different resources and the opportunities that Girl Guiding Scotland and Girl Guiding UK more widely have in place to empower girls, build up their confidence in themselves, and as a result, tackle prejudice or image-based bullying in young people. Girl Guiding's ethos is centred around being girl-led. Our programme, activities and campaigns are all driven by girls and work from the bottom up based on our research and our members' views. We want girls to know that they are listened to and that they can do anything. With our programme and resources, we mainly focus on 3 of Respect Me's calls to action. Call to action number 2, leading the conversations, is essential for putting girls' ideas at the forefront. By encouraging them to lead the conversation on stereotypes, our girls can build their confidence to think differently and explore the ways that work best for them in challenging bullying behaviour. They can explain how the media impacts them personally and are then empowered to come up with their own solutions, which then further links into other calls to action on campaigning and creating safe, supportive environments. Call to action 4, creating a culture of body acceptance and building a wider strategy of inclusion and diversity, is at the very heart of guiding. We are consistently striving to create a safe environment that is inclusive and welcoming of difference, so that all girls know that they are accepted and have a safe space to go to, regardless of anything that is going on in their school or home lives. It reinforces the community that empowers Girl Guiding. And then call to action number 6, inspiring young people to lead campaigns, is arguably what Girl Guiding Scotland is most famous for and exactly what my role entails. Our organisation's personality is centred around being courageous and curious, encouraging girls to have a go and be inquisitive about key issues in their lives and communities. It's so important for young people to know that they can change the world, and their passion to change laws and attitudes on things such as body stereotypes or inclusive communities has helped transform girls' and young women's lives for the better. All of these call to actions and the resources we employ are what make us change ready and help in translating the concerns and worries of girls into solutions that tangibly improve girls' real and everyday lives. We will keep seeking to listen to our members and seek to gain the views of young women across the country, as this ensures the change is sustainable because we keep those that are affected at the centre of all actions and ensure that their involvement is not tokenistic but imperative to the work that we do. So this is a statistic that we've got from the 2021 Girls' Attitudes Survey. So yeah, it does show that we have a long way to go when addressing appearance-related bullying, but it does motivate us to work harder. So 45% of girls aged 7 to 21 have experienced images online that made them insecure about their appearance, and 21% experienced online bullying. So we offer a range of resources for leading conversations on this particular issue. The Media Critic Badge puts the media under the spotlight and helps our girls develop critical thinking skills to challenge stereotypes or biased narratives. This includes learning about the Bechdel test and the Macklemore test. The Friends of the Scotsman is a long-standing partnership with the Scotsman, with the next upcoming article focused on media stereotypes holding girls back in their careers and diminishing their confidence. It is one of the most visible platforms for enabling girls to drive the conversation and write about whatever they believe is most important. And for me, as lead volunteer, it's just brilliant to see the girls that I work with have their confidence grow and see their name in print, which is really exciting. Breaking Free is part of our peer education series. It's a resource specifically designed to help young people break free of gender stereotyping and to encourage their friends to be who they really are. I'll explain a bit more about peer education in the next slide and how it creates sustainable change. And then the Girls' Attitude Survey is a piece of girl guiding research that gives girls and young women a platform to speak out about the pressures they face today, including the impact of the global pandemic and the ubiquity of social media. Since our groundwork is based mainly on intimately understanding what girls need and want, we can ensure that addressing bullying and creating an environment of support comes from the ideas of young people and is proactive in listening to them. Based on the statistic you saw before, for example, we've developed a training programme within the peer education that focuses on the harms girls face online and teaches them about bias and stereotypes in the media. It highlights false notions created by the media on how women and girls should look. Otherwise, topics within peer education have included fighting gender stereotypes to encouraging self-belief to improving mental well-being. A key part of the peer education is that by getting girls to lead the resource and dictate the lesson plans, they are involved from the very beginning. The bottom-up approach of this resource includes that there are no barriers to entry or participation, and in turn this is significantly more sustainable and collaborative. It avoids tokenism because the lived experiences, ideas and identities of each individual girl are incorporated into their teaching style and in teaching the topics that they care most about. They become role models for girls all over the country. How does Girl Guiding Scotland create a culture of body confidence? Well, Free Being Me was created in partnership with Dove to address the low body confidence amongst girls. The programme was designed by our network of peer educators and informed by world-leading research into body confidence. By involving our peer educators and their supporting adult volunteers, it strengthens the impact of the programme onto the girls themselves and creates real and long-lasting change. It's also based around fun and non-formal education activities, providing flexibility for the girls to choose which activities appeal to them and not to feel pressured to participate if they feel uncomfortable or triggered at any point. We made sure that it was accessible for as many young people as possible by creating two types of book, one for girls aged 7 to 10 and then another for girls aged 11 to 14. Moving forward, we want to continue to build our resources for older girls too, as they experience new and often increasing pressures around their appearance. Free Being Me reflects our core values of respect for yourself and others, taking responsibility for yourself, working with others, and making a difference in the community. And if I could remember the guide promise, I'm a terrible girl guide, I would tell you it right now, but that does reflect those values. When the resource was first created, our 2013 Girls' Attitude Survey found that 47% of girls aged 11 to 16 were unhappy with how they looked, and 46% were happy. In 2022, those that are happy has increased to 50%. Free Being Me is just one microcosm of the wider girl guiding ethos of empowering girls to value what is on the inside and be proud of who they are as people and who they will become in their adult lives. We hope that it helps girls voice their opinions and make their voices heard, building confidence from the inside out. So this is an example from the Free Being Me pack. So You're My Star, it can be adapted for all ages and participants. It stresses the importance of small positive actions to show how each individual girl can make a difference in building up body confidence amongst her peers and within herself. Small steps can make big changes and can help challenge appearance-related prejudice early on. So, we collected feedback from one of the young members who participated in this resource. Here are a few short quotes and then some statistics to show the impact of this resource. Of course, there's always more to be done. There's always more girls to talk to and empower, but it's a really promising place to be within the Free Being Me journey right now. We hope that this partnership and resource helps inspire other youth organisations, thinking about which external stakeholders support their policies, have capacity to research and develop a programme like this, possesses the necessary research and have done previous projects in keeping with the overall ethos. Dove and the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts have actually been working together for well over a decade as it is. So yeah, this is a quote from a brownie aged 8. I am beautiful on the inside and I like me for me. And I'm going to write that in my mirror. So from a guide aged 11, I feel more comfortable in my own skin. I encourage my friends to feel more comfortable too. And from a guide aged 13, which is the dreaded age to be, which you'll know if you've ever been a teenage girl, I realised that it is more important to focus on who I am on the inside than what I look like on the outside, which is just lovely. So, after using the Free Being Me resource, one of the challenges that we did experience with this resource is helping girls, especially the older girls, overcome the entrenched beliefs that they had regarding their appearances and what is the expected standard of beauty. Unteaching that sort of lesson is quite difficult, as sometimes it brings up raw and vulnerable emotions. As a result, it was crucial that we had buy-in from the parents too, encouraging them to continue the conversation at home with their children and read the resource themselves. We provided a template letter to parents and guardians at the back of the pack so that peer educators can easily copy and paste those without giving them too much extra work. We also did actively encourage parents to volunteer in the units, or just for during using the Free Being Me programme, so that they can see the activities playing out in real time. We also designed the challenges to be most suitable for small groups, so as to create a safe and softer and more intimate space for girls to explore their feelings and understandings on body confidence without being intimidated by large groups and lots of opinions. The programme is flexible so that activities can be run in a variety of formats, either as a couple of long 90-minute sessions or as 3 to 4 shorter sessions, depending on the capacity of the units involved. This allows more units to participate, and nothing that required a computer or a printer was essential, just optional. This meant that we can make a real difference to girls' body confidence, as seen with those stats. Supporting young people to lead campaigns, which is in relation to Call to Action 6. So we have a variety of formats and platforms through which girls can lead local campaigns, and have previously supported multiple pathways for addressing appearance-related bullying or promoting good body image. In the last webinar, I spoke about the campaign I was actively involved in as a Girl Guiding Scotland member, and that was Media Mindful, which was specifically targeted at challenging gender media stereotypes and image-related pressure in the media. It inspired girls to support each other and reject prejudices for how girls and young women should look. On a wider UK level, we have the Girl Guiding Advocates, who developed an ongoing campaign called Future Girl. This is built around 5 key topics, one of which is self-believer. They help our members to be supported and accepted as they are. This is part of a wider initiative to make the world fairer, safer and more equal. Advocates have also attended political conferences and met one-on-one with politicians to discuss the issues that impact them. For example, they marked Safer Internet Day 2022 by speaking at an event in Parliament on the importance of safe and positive experiences for children and young people online. Moving away from specific initiatives and projects, our wide-ranging programme of badges and activities defines Girl Guiding and epitomises the core essence of who we are and how we encourage girls and young women to do anything that they want to do and be anything that they want to be. At every level, we offer girls the opportunity to lead local campaigns and to speak out. Through these badges, our girls have addressed appearance-related bullying and body image stereotypes by organising a protest, writing to their local MSPs, or hosting an awareness day at school or within their units. Being change ready is not without its challenges. We've created sustainable change by working from the bottom up, engaging girls at every possible opportunity so that our programme is designed by girls, led by girls and for girls, which is conveniently also our new tagline. However, that requires getting young people to participate and feel enfranchised by the process, which can be difficult when they have so many other pressures and commitments to deal with. We have at times struggled to get them to reply to emails or tell us what they want. So in cases where we've had large groups or not received as much feedback as we wanted, we've instead given them options of different areas and say, designing a campaign that may interest them rather than delegate responsibility to those who might not want it. This helped them feel more like they were leading the change and their passion shone through too. It also enabled the quieter voices to find their groove rather than being droned out by the cacophony of other ideas. When talking to girls about topics like body confidence, as identified previously, it can be difficult to overcome the stigma and systemic beliefs that they already possess. When this happens, we gently challenge comments on these beliefs and ask girls to think about why they may feel the way they do and to think about how others may feel about what they're saying. All of our resources promote diversity and choice, self-acceptance, and a non-judgmental approach to others. When leading sessions at units, we also provide a checklist for peer educators or leaders in training to follow, guiding them through how to tailor a session so that it considers additional support needs, particularly communication needs, and to offer support in answering difficult questions and to check in about group dynamics that may impact the flow of learning and conversation. So, to conclude, taking all of this into account, our top 3 tips for being change ready as a youth organisation are: number 1, to build change from the ground up, bringing our young members from the very beginning to consult on issues that actually matter to them and to create solutions that really work for them. This is why peer education, for example, is so successful. And then number 2, our guiding principle for all our research and policy is that we empower girls to speak up and raise their voices. We listen to what they have to say and then we act, such as the case of the Girls' Attitude Survey, as you've seen by the statistics previously. And then number 3, finally, in 2018 and 2019, Girl Guiding UK asked 50,000 members of our community, girls, volunteers, staff, parents and partners, to tell us what they wanted for our future. From this, we've made Girl Guiding strategy. It's created from a real picture of the challenges that Girl Guiding is facing, as well as its potential. We then consistently check in with the girls and volunteers for feedback and evaluation on how well we're delivering a positive and impactful experience for them. We conduct continuous audits of our badges, programme and resources so to ensure Girl Guiding is a diverse and inclusive community, and we are so proud to see the journey of self-confidence and growth from our girls, starting at Rainbows at age 4 all the way to Rangers at 18 and volunteers beyond. We know that there's still a lot of work ahead of us, but in terms of addressing appearance-related bullying and prejudices, but hopefully you've taken some ideas away from the work that we do at Girl Guiding Scotland to build up confidence and empower girls to believe in their own conviction and ideas. We would love to have a more collaborative conversation with other youth organisations on supporting young people from the very start of their lives. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you took something away from that. I know that I really love to talk about my work empowering girls and young women, and thank you, Philippa, for being the best assistant here.
Thank you so much, Grace. I think the thanks go to you for that incredibly again inspiring conversation. What an incredible role model you are, Grace, and I commend your courageousness, your courage. I don't even know whether courageousness is a word, but I commend your courage and your own curiosity in leading on the work that you are leading on, and just such important work that you're doing. And just as I said before with Leanne's presentation, what Leanne offered was a kind of a step-by-step guide and a model for how to do effective parent-carer engagement. And I think what you've set out today is a really fantastic set of ideas and tips for how to do really positive youth engagement work, and importantly girl-led work. So thank you so much for that. And I think the other thing I took from what you said is just that you know, the resources are all there, but the importance of young people leading the resources. But just to reflect back to something that Laura said at the beginning of the session tonight, that young people need the adults to walk alongside them to use those resources, identify those resources that are all out there. And I hope everybody on the call today goes away, you know, chomping at the bit to get their hands on these resources, because nobody has to create these resources and work from scratch. Organisations like your own, Girl Guiding Scotland and Changing Faces, have already done the groundwork and incredible work to make your lives easier. So I hope that you will put into place Grace's and Leanne's tips for youth and parental engagement, and use those resources really widely and wisely. And just finally, I just wanted to just summarise that presentation by just again pointing out that what you're doing with that work is not only encouraging girls to self-reflect and be aware of issues, but through that develop compassion and understanding, so that they are less likely to bully others. So it's not just about equipping girls with the tools to be able to cope and deal with appearance-related bullying if it's happening to them, but also through those conversations and that awareness and education mean that you're developing young people that are much less likely to go on and display harmful behaviours towards others. So thank you very, very much for your work, Grace, and thank you, Philippa, for being such an amazing assistant. I wish we all had an assistant like that. So without further ado, I'm going to just open up the question and answers element of this section. If anybody on the call has got a question for Philippa or Grace, please do pop it into the chat. We appreciate that that you've done a lot of listening today, but we often learn a lot from the questions that are being asked too. So really encourage you to pop those questions in the chat box. And Safi, if you've got anything that you would like to ask Grace, then we'll kick off with yourself.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have received a couple of questions as well, and so I'll direct this to Philippa, and obviously Grace, you answer if you wish also. So the first question is, how can our audience put into practice your recommendations for how to be change ready and make them work in a local context? You've already touched upon this, but a bit, but perhaps you could tell us a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of reflecting on what Grace said in her presentation, we need to give young people ownership and empowerment of the change that we want to see. So we give them the responsibilities to create projects or resources, to make decisions that have real impact in creating change. We need to continually be looking for ways to offer more opportunities, particularly as adults, as Lisa identified, walking alongside the kids at local or young people, local and national levels. And make sure that we're educating ourselves on how best to cooperate and include young people from all backgrounds. So locally, this is slightly easier because we know more personally the unique circumstances and needs of young people in the area and can adapt better to be more welcoming and to challenge root causes and dynamics. We can remove barriers by giving them a safer, empowered place to go within their own communities. We can more directly reach out to find out what's needed to be inclusive. We need to let young people tell us what they need, what they want, listen to them, and then capacity build outwards. So starting at that very root level locally and then building outwards at a nationally. And then start from the ground up. So this in turn is going to build their confidence in themselves, helps them engage their friends, helps them engage other young people in their local communities, and will hopefully drive forward more inclusive and diverse practices, challenging head-on bullying that's based on differences or stereotypes.
Fantastic. That's such an interesting answer. Yeah, and I think there's so much that we can take from that, and kind of employ that within our communities. And secondly, we have an additional question, which is, what is the unique role of youth work settings to affect change alongside education and parents and carers? And I think this is a really good question to kind of bring everyone's really valuable inputs together this evening.
So that's a good question. It's quite difficult to come up with like one simple answer for that. So obviously all different youth organisations are going to have their kind of different approaches, their different focus. But from what I've seen working with Girl Guiding Scotland particularly, and other youth organisations, is that particularly across Scotland, schools and educational institutions are required to teach children and young people about like healthy relationships and building out their confidence, and teaching them from a young age that the value that they should have within themselves and the respect that they show those around them, especially when recognizing that everyone is unique and different in their own way, I think is an essential part of helping them feel secure and supported, and in preventing prejudices that may lead to bullying. And so these sorts of skills and relationships occur at home and in extracurricular activities and in youth settings as much as they do in school. And youth organisations can be vital in teaching values of honesty, kindness and respect across a variety of environments. It's that compassion, again, that we were talking about earlier. And since we are also not, as a youth organisation, mandated by government curriculum like schools are, we can also work on a more personal level with young people to provide support and tools to empower empower them and help raise their voices, building up their confidence and providing a safe place to go, as Grace mentioned.
Thank you so much, Philippa. That was really insightful, and I think certainly what's coming across this evening is the importance of, you know, compassion, but also that collaboration of working together as youth organisations, having that really active parental engagement and involvement, and also, you know, education. Anyway, I will now thank you so much for your answers there, and I'm now going to hand you back over to Lisa.
Thank you, Safia. So I'm going to just, I guess, sum up this evening. We're in our last 15 minutes together with this session this evening, and what I would like to do, I guess, is pull a lot of what we've heard this evening together and focus on some general principles of change that we, over the years at Respect Me, when we've been working with all the different stakeholders and partners and youth settings that we work with, what they actually embrace. What we can see here on the first slide is some general principles of change. And the first thing, I guess, to draw your attention to, and we've I think Changing Faces have really underlined this for us in their presentation, is around about change starting with ourselves. And that ability to be aware of our own unconscious biases, be aware of where our own learning and education lies, where those gaps are, and to encourage that self-reflection. So all of us today have all got the potential to be and are change makers, but acknowledging that the change starts with ourselves first, and that kind of self-reflection and analysis. The second the second point here on that we can kind of draw attention to is around about that desire and recognizing the need to change, having the why, because without the why, it's very difficult to sustain and have the energy to drive forward change. So recognizing and being aware of what the why is. And I think across all the presentations this evening, when we've heard about the impacts that appearance-related bullying can have, how it's affecting children and young people's lives, what they've told us, that is a huge why. That's why we do all of this, because we want to minimise the harm that children and young people are telling us that they're experiencing in relation to their appearance. Again, we want that change to be sustainable, and what that requires is leadership, and that leadership, I think we've heard come across clearly this evening, is from two directions. We need really strong leadership in our communities, in our education settings, to be able to take the awareness raising, the why, and actually start implementing and moving forward with change. So that comes from effective top leadership, but also, as the speakers have said today, it requires also bottom up leadership as well, grassroots leadership. So I think, again, it's about recognising that there are a range of different ways to be change ready, but these are some of the most important ones. And Safi has already alluded to collaboration. We can't do this in isolation. It requires leaders, it requires young people being given the tools and ability to lead on work. It requires effective parental engagement work. So that collaboration. And finally, from the last point that I'll talk about is around about communication. So being able to listen well to what children and young people, parents and carers, and other staff and practitioners that we work with are telling us is really important. Being able to be transparent about why we're creating change, why we are moving on change, and how we're going to do that, and being prepared to keep that dialogue open and being able to, you know, to hear difficulties and things that people are finding challenging is so important. So I'm going to hand over to Safia. She's going to talk through some other principles, and then we will draw this session to an end. So thank you, Safia.
Okay, so the next good general principle of change is good planning. I think we've seen that right across the presentations, that, you know, it's really important to really embed policy into practice by using all these amazing resources that our eminent speakers today have referred us to. So please do go and dig those out. The next is take action. So start from wherever you are and work with the tools you have. And, you know, if it doesn't work, try again. But I think what's really important in terms of the message we've heard today is do take that action for change and become a change maker. The next is being adaptable and open to learning. And, you know, in turn, you can create the dynamic change that is needed. Be consistent, avoid tokenism, to avoid tokenism and promote that sustainable change that, again, all of our speakers alluded to this evening. And finally, really embed culture and ethos, embrace difference, celebrate diversity and similarity, and, you know, really go out there and make a change. I do encourage you all to become change makers, and I hope what you've heard this evening really facilitates the much needed change that we need to make in order to improve the lives of children and young people across Scotland and help them feel included, safe and respected. So back to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks, Safia. So I'm just going to sum up then with some final comments before we all finish up for this evening. So on behalf of Respect Me, I would like to thank all of our speakers, you, all of our audience guests and the Respect Me team supporting the Changemaker series today and for sharing your work, your insights and recommendations for change. And all of our speakers and panelists have spoken loudly and clearly today on the importance of us working collectively as practitioners, parents, carers, and young people, channeling our energy into taking the vital practical prevention strategies, such as education, robust policy, and practice to address issues related to body image, appearance, and bullying. So we hope, just finally, that by listening and learning from today's speakers, that you have learned more about how to be change ready, to act and go out and back into your settings and support Respect Me's calls to action in your unique settings, to create and lead the change needed to protect children and young people from appearance-related bullying and all other types of bullying, to ensure that every child growing up is able to be safe, included, empowered, equal and respected. So there's so much that we can all do, and I want to send out a clear message to all of you today that we've all got our sphere of influence, we've all got ability to affect change, and as Girl Guiding Scotland's mission is that that young people can be active leaders of change, and that we as adults enable them to do that. So what I'd like you to do now is to take a moment to reflect on what you've heard and tell us about which actions you can and will progress after today's event so that you are change ready. So I'd just like to hand back to Claire, and she is going to just lead a quick Slido session, little Slido question around about what you've heard today and how you are going to move forward.
What is your main takeaway on how to become a change maker from today's Are You Change Ready webinar? Thank you very much.
So I can, yeah, so if you can see those hopefully coming up on the screen now. So challenging myself Yeah, absolutely. So this work never stops, does it? And you know, it's a constant evolution and journey of self-reflection, challenging ourselves to think what we're doing well, what we can do better, and you know, to inform us of how we can move forward with change. So reflections is so important. Upskilling teachers, representation, listening to young people, children's voice is key. Asking young people. So a lot of comments coming in about the role of children and young people in this, which is absolutely brilliant that we've embraced that. That's very strong message. And building upwards. So yeah, I think the other kind of key thing takeaway here is it's very easy to think about, okay, well, you know, what can I do in my role? How can I affect change? And sometimes it can feel very daunting and overwhelming, can't it, when we're dealing with big societal challenges such as appearance-related bullying, and stigma and negative body image. But, you know, that message about we've all got that sphere of influence, we can build upwards and we can work from there. We work with the tools and resources that we've got. And I hope today you feel that you've got and been equipped with lots of tools and resources to build upwards, as somebody has said. So, yeah, great comments, everybody, and really, really appreciate you sharing those with us. So I'm just going to, I guess, finish now with just some more information about how we can, I guess, keep in touch with each other. And if I could maybe go to the final slide, Claire, I don't know if you have that final slide around about hashtag Team Changemaker and making sure that you're included on that, included in this. So thank you for attending. We've got the Survey Monkey in the chat box. We absolutely value your comments and feedbacks. All of our training and seminars are free. And in order to continue this work, we're funded by Scottish Government. All of your comments are so valuable to inform how we go forward with our work. So please take the time to fill in the Survey Monkey. The other thing that I'd like to allude to is that everybody that's attended today will receive a digital resource pack. So there's been a huge amount of work behind the scenes that's gone towards pulling together links, resources, not just for webinar 1, but also a new digital resource pack for webinar 2. So everybody will get emailed that out after this session. And then finally, just to let you know that we have our last and final webinar 3 coming up on May the 24th, which is spotlighting disability and bullying. So registration will be open for that tomorrow, and you can go in and secure your spot for that session tomorrow, which so we'll be working with a new set of partners for that particular webinar. So encourage you to spread the word about the next one. That will be the final one for 2023, Inclusion and Diversity Spotlight. So thank you. Bang on the button, 6 o'clock. I am absolutely delighted that you've been able to join us. Please let your networks know about the recording that will also be shared with the digital resource pack once it's been edited. And I just thank you for your time, and I thank you for every single speaker that's given up their time and the evening this week to share their work and energy. We couldn't have done it without you. So have a lovely evening, everybody. Do keep in touch with Respect Me. You can follow us through our social media channels at all the usual places, and have a lovely, lovely evening. Thanks, everybody.